Good. And good evening to you all. You are welcome once again to our virtual teaching. Before I go to the channels, subscribe to the channel, and of course, I recommend to your friends. Now, last time we met, we looked at the general characteristics of the forest and coastal states. What was common to all of them? That is what we looked at. The things that were common, and we established that they all had a common language, their social and political system were all common, their trend of expansion was also common. We also said that we said a lot of things about them that were common. And today we are still on the West African forest and coastal states as a follow-up or as a continuation of our previous lessons. Today we are looking at the general factors for the rise of the forest and coastal states. So the first one we looked at was their general characteristics. This one we are looking at the general factors that aided these forest and coastal states to rise in the sense that to become empires, from a small state to become an empire. You would agree with me that Asante did not just started and all of a sudden it became an empire. No, they started small and gradually they conquered more states. Now an empire is a state which has more towns or conquered people under it. You don't know what an empire is, go and Google an empire. So they all didn't just start as an empire. Okay, yes. So we are going to look at what aided them, all of them, the Dahomey, the Benin people, the Yorubas, and all of that. What aided them to rise, to become powerful? And some of the states were very, very powerful. Dahomey, very, very powerful. Dahomey Empire, very, very powerful. The Asante Kingdom, very, very powerful. Okay, so what brought about that rise? And this is general for all of them. So our objectives will be to discuss the factors responsible for the rise of towns in the forest and coastal states of West Africa. So factors that aided them to rise, okay, to become that powerful that we know. So quickly, let's take a look at factors for the rise of the forest and coastal states. So factors that aided the rise of the forest and coastal states. Now, one, the West African states were built around a central nucleus of people, and we said that this was one of their characteristics, their general characteristics, and that characteristics enabled them to rise or to grow, because all the kingdoms were built or solidly built around a hard core of kindred people or similar people. And we have examples there. Akan group or clan served as the core of the Asante Kingdom. So it was the Akans who founded the Asante Kingdom, even though other people then joined. The Yoruba also founded the Oyo state, okay, while the Dahomey also established the Aja state, and the Ido-speaking people also founded what? Benin. You understand? So, the Aja, you realize that, of course, you realize that all these states were founded around a core group of people. Hence, it prevented them from fighting among each other. Because if you found a state or a kingdom with different group of people, what happened is that at the end of the day, one section of the people decides to rebel. But because we are saying that this helped them to rise, because they were free from war and rebellions, because all of them saw themselves as one people, and therefore there was no need for them to fight. And so, because they were built around that same people, it aided them to rise. Do you agree to that? Good. Let's take a look at the next one. The West African states, the West African forest and coastal states, also were located at strategic places. All the states that we have talked about were located strategically. The coastal states were strategically located, and this facilitated their early rise and expansion. These states were located either within the forest belt or at the edge of the forest belt. As a result of the fertile nature of the land, they practiced agriculture. The strategic location of these states also made the area a principal center of trade between the forest and the savanna areas. So strategically, in the sense that they had good lands, because most of them were strategically placed or were founded in the forest belt. You understand? Look at Tremwasi, for instance. Look at where you have Adansi Asokwa. Just look around your school, Ghana Christian High. Are we strategically located or not? Look at the nature of the land. Look at the greener pasture. Do you see this in Accra? So we are strategically located in the sense that the land will be good for farming. Look at the kind of fruits you see around, the plantains you see around, the yams you see around. Everything you grow, of course, everything you cultivate will grow. And so that is what happened to all the forest and coastal states that we looked at. They were all strategically located, and so there was no need for them to move about searching for fertile land and all of that. They could till the land, and so they stayed there, tilled the land, and grew. And grew. Good. We are looking at the next factor that enabled them to rise. Now, the West Africans also had dynamic leaders. Yes, and it will interest you to know that all the West African kingdoms and states had some sort of dynamic leaders who were very, very, very powerful. Very, very, very powerful. And this was one of the major reasons that led them to rise. Because if you have a good leader who leads you, I bet you go far. Now, these leaders of the coastal states played important and decisive roles to expand the frontiers of their territory. Now, for instance, let's give you a vivid example. For instance, the first three Asante kings, namely Obiri Abua, who was the first king, Osei Tutu, next Opokuwari, the third, they did very well to expand the Asante kingdom by waging wars of conquest against less powerful states like Achem, Denchira, the Wassa, the Chiman, and among others. So these three kings of the Asante, what they needed to do was, or what they wanted to do was to wage wars of expansion, to conquer more people, so that their land or their territory would expand. And that is basically what they did. Some leaders like Agaja, they all did well by expanding their territory. And so, as they embark on wars of expansion, what happened was that it will end them, or it will contribute to the rise of their states and kingdoms. And that is how come the Asantes were able to rise, because they conquered less states like the Adanse, the Achem people, the Denchira, the Wassa. All these were states, but they were not powerful. So they all came under the rule of Asante. And the Asante Empire, and other West African states, rise. The West African states also had effective army. All these West African states we have looked at, they had powerful armies, so you could not attack them anyhow. Okay? And for example, if you go to Dahomey, for instance, men and women, and even children, they took part in battle in Dahomey. So there was no way you could even attack and defeat them. And so they were able to protect their territory, and that aided them to rise. They were able to maintain their land, maintain their status quo. Look at these states, Achem, Denchira, Wassa, and Co. They were not powerful. That is why they didn't have good armies or standing armies or effective armies. That is why they lost their lands and the Asantes took over. So if you have an effective army, of course, nobody can come and conquer you. And in Dahomey, for instance, everybody took part in battle. Now, Dahomey again also had women soldiers called the Amazons, and they were very much feared. In Dahomey, it was serious. They had women soldiers. Their soldiers were only women soldiers, and we call them the Amazons. And they were very much feared. People feared them. Do you remember when we used to watch movies like Cynthia? There was this American blockbuster movie called Cynthia. And Charlie, the way when you hear Cynthia, a woman, and he was feared by men because he would beat everybody. This is, I mean, the same thing is happening here. The Amazons were fearful, and so nobody could take the Asante Kingdom. Also, the Asante army or the Dahomey Kingdom. Also, the Asante army was strengthened with the introduction of guns and gunpowder from the European on the coast. Asante's army was also strengthened with the introduction of gun and gunpowder. So now they did not fear anything. They could conquer. Even the British, they had wars with the British. Asante, for instance, fought severally with the British, all in the name of maintaining their land. Now let's take a look at the pictures over there. Now look at the pictures. Bokuwari is there. Bokuwari, the Asante. Bokuwari, we have Obriawa over here, and this is the Amazon, the Muslim, the women soldiers, the Amazon, and that is a good picture of them. The women soldiers, they were very, very much feared. You fear them. The image you see there were some of the guns that were introduced by the British, and therefore the Asantes with this gun were able to conquer more states, and so they rose. Okay, their kingdom quickly rose. So when you are asked to talk about some of the general characteristics that led to their rise, please, or the rise of the West African forest and coastal states, make your point, but also add examples to buttress your point. Okay, and so basically that will bring us to the end of our lesson. And as we do every day, take a look at our try work over here, and of course I am confident that if you are asked anywhere to talk about the rise of these states, you will be able to do it and do it well. So with this, I say goodbye. Subscribe to the channel and recommend for your friends. 054-2083-047. We shall meet again some other time. Goodbye.